Looks like
All
we
set?
are now recording. Yep.
Thank you all for the meeting change. It was necessary because I have budget meeting on the 21st, and that involved a bunch of department heads, so I didn't want to change that. So thank you for changing this meeting. We'll start with minutes. Jamie put up, I guess you put up December, but that's not just this afternoon. Was it December?
It the April.
So, oh, you put up April?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll deal with that the next meeting, as many as we can get done.
Okay.
Scott's coming on, that's good.
Kate just joined.
Okay. I don't have any public here. I don't consider the members of the Housing Partnership public. They are members of the Housing Partnership. City officials communication. I have nothing special. Account balances. I'm going to share the account balances. When I share the screen, it's hard for me to see if you want to raise your hand, so use the participation. No. I'm sorry, I'm going to find account balances here. Darn it. My computer is going crazy. Here's the account balances. I don't have any questions over them, but Jessica, you had questions on them. Are you all set with the account balances? Can you see these okay?
Looks like they're the same from what was presented last month, so that's fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, I did not get an official update from the auditors, but after the appropriations made, or the recommendations last month, the historic preservation balance is approximately at $56,000. Affordable housing is at $233,000. What is shown on that sheet. The undesignated has not changed. The reserve fund has not changed. And the total is down to the 1.06 million.
Jamie, can you see if Kate needed to get back in, and is Greg waiting?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. I have a smaller, oh, now I got it. I just found out that I could extend my little images. So no more questions on the account balances? Everybody sees this okay? Okay,
Yep.
I'm gonna go right into the rent relief program. This is the actual funding agreement. We are seeking $300,000, and this is the, I'm sorry, I'm going to go up a little bit. This is the RFP now, which I find incredibly well done. You'll have to forgive me, sometimes my computer, damn, get out of there. So I'm very, very, very happy with this. It does reference page 13, Jackie, which I wondered, hold on. This is the grant program guidelines, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the things I have highlighted, and then I'll ask other people to join in. Gap financing, are we limiting it, Jackie and Kate, or Jamie, to above 50% to 100%? We talked about that at the last meeting, trying to get that particular gap covered, or you just have it 100% and below in what I've been reading here. Who wants to respond to that?
So we had it at 100% and below because when we were talking about it
there is other funding available for folks at very low income, and Jamie and Kate, please jump in if I'm forgetting anything. So there is already funding available for folks who are at, 30 to 50%. So this really, it mostly targets people 50 to 100%, but it gives, say I'm at 30%, I've already run out of all my other options. I could still potentially come to this fund if I had to, but I would have to show that I've already used the other funding that's available first.
That those particular limitations are in the documents that
Well, it
the
says, so if you look
administrator
at,
will do.
yeah, if you look at the program guidelines D,
Yep, right here.
so those are programs that are specifically for folks at the very low end. So they have to show that they've already used up all of that already before.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Okay.
I like that A says currently residing in rental unit in the city of Easthampton. And you reference these guidelines in the RFP. Does there have to be anything more strict about that in the RFP, or do you think this is sufficient? That's my only concern, is that this be limited to Easthampton residents and that the administrators know this.
Yeah, it's Easthampton money, so it has to be limited to Easthampton residents. I think that's pretty clear.
Obvious. Okay.
Yeah.
There's also an addendum, it's just because we can only look at one thing at a time, but in the other, if you look in the RFP itself, you have to do.
You have a page, Kate?
Jamie, do you know what I'm referring to when you have to give a lease agreement or?
Yeah, I thought that was under the guidelines. It might also be under the scope of services.
Yeah, it is referenced there. So we want to give the subcontractor some flexibility, but I think there is a point of it that's could be scope. The other thing that the committee should just be aware of is that truly this is, the beauty of it is really attributable to the town of Amherst. So instead of the reason why we didn't have to talk too much about synergy and aligning with other towns is the town of Amherst has already put out their RFP, and this is really just modeled right off of there. So theoretically, whoever was bidding for the town of Amherst and ours could align very easily, and we didn't have to ask what are the other criteria.
Now, Jamie and Jeff, do you monitor this program once it begins with the administrators? I mean, I assume that you get some kind of update as to how many people they're helping and.
Yeah, so under the scope of services, or page 4, program payments and reporting. So the contractor is required to send biweekly status reports to the City of Easthampton Planning Department, including status of applications, executed contracts, and landlord payments.
I guess I don't see that.
Page 4.
Page 4 of this doc. Am I near it here?
Yep, it's number 23.
It's page 6 of the PDF, but it says 4 at the bottom.
Thank you.
Oh, it's sorry, it's page 4 of the RFP.
Thank you
Greg.
for helping me.
One more.
And what number?
23.
My computer goes haywire when I move the screen.
We're all a little bit haywire at this point, Dan.
Biweekly status reports. Okay. All right, that's good. So you had said, I read up at the top that it can't be more than 20% of the total. So in other words, it could be $60,000 to administer this program. That seems high to me. Is that 20% okay with everybody here? Or is that normal, Jackie, Kate, Jamie? 20% is administrative costs?
I mean, we're asking the contractor to submit a budget as part of this request for proposal. So we're hoping that it's less than the 20%. And we'll make
That will be the place where the bidding kind of comes in, right? Because they have to change they're bidding against each other on administrative costs, really, aren't they? Whoever's gonna apply for this.
Well, the way this RFP is set up, it's set up for a price, non-price proposal. So they're going to be actually evaluated off of their response and how they're meeting our program guidelines. Once we've selected a proposal as being the best submitted, then we'll look at their budget and what they've submitted for costs. So it's possible that we will look at that, but it's not something that's the predominant criteria of evaluation.
Okay, so how many vendors do you think might apply for this? Is it just 2 or 3 in the valley? Jackie, you're shaking your head, yes. Okay,
Yeah, I would guess 2 or 3 would be about all we'll get.
well, that's still good.
Yeah, it's great.
Most of them are up and running, administering, well, the Amherst program is being administered by one of these vendors.
I don't know if they've actually contracted yet.
Okay.
I don't know if Jamie, do you know if they put it out for bid yet?
I don't know.
I would guess they haven't because they only like finalized it a week or 2 ago. They might have. I didn't look at it closely enough with their dates, but they'll probably have the same people that are going to bid on the Amherst. There's probably going to bid on ours.
Last question is the budget. We have maximum of $3,000 per household, or $500 a month for, I think it was a single unit, and it goes back to April 1st. I like that. That'll, if it's all let's say there's 250,000. My math says if it's 3,000 per household, it's 83 people. That's pretty good. 83 households. But I imagine we'll get more because there'll be single units. I just want to say I think that's great. If we could, is the limitations allow us to service more people. So you guys are okay with $3,000 max per household? That's what you guys recommended, right? Kate, you guys did that, okay.
Well, I think the goal is really, obviously, on some level, it would be better to do more, but I think there's a limited amount of funds. And so the question is, do you want to help a few people as much as possible, or do you want to help as many as possible? And so, yeah, particularly because even if we help people, it's unclear for how long they will still be able to stay. So it seems best to help as many people as possible.
Okay,
We're also asking the contractor to negotiate with landlords for reduction of back rent when in the cases that it's owed, to try to stretch these funds as much as possible.
Okay. Any members want to jump in here and ask questions about the RFP program goals? Just tell me what page you want me to go to in the shared document. If you can do the PDF page up at the top, that's easier for me. Anybody have a question?
I have a question. This is Chris. So when we get bids and we evaluate and we choose or whoever's doing the evaluation chooses the most qualified bidder and then opens up the price proposal, are we required to negotiate that proposal if we think it's too high or unreasonable? Are we required to negotiate with them to get to something that's mutually agreeable, or can we, if we are unsatisfied with the price proposal, can we go to the next bidder that's the next qualified and then open that price?
I think there's state bidding laws here involved. Jamie, can you answer that, or Jeff?
I don't know the answer to how the bidding negotiation works, and I can look into that. But like I said previously, the RFPs are being evaluated based off the non-price, the technical piece of it.
Yeah.
So if we don't like their price, we can go back and forth. If they can agree to another price, we're not. But like I said, I'd have to get more clarification from procurement.
You're not bound for the lowest price, though, right, Jamie? Like
Right.
it's
Correct.
There is flexibility to look at the qualitative merits of any application, any somebody who
Correct.
fills out the RFP.
And the people evaluating are Jeff, Jamie, and the housing partnership people? Is that who's evaluating the vendors?
I don't know that we've formed the evaluation committee yet. It will definitely be myself and Jackie and Kate. And I think previously we had, if we need another person or two, then we'll either reach out to members of the CPA committee or city planner or procurement officer.
I know you're busy, Jeff, but I'd love it if you could be an evaluator because you've done this a lot.
I'm happy to be part of that review team. That's totally fine with me.
Okay. I mean,
And are there
the
any
housing
other?
partnership people know the most of our group. I guess Jess is one of the best ones. Jess, you had a question. Why don't we get back to Jess?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One, I'm just curious if when you were drafting the RFP, if you had spoken to any landlords in Easthampton and got a sense of whether they've already had tenants come to them and tell them that they're going to have a tough time paying. And I'm just curious if those discussions have happened at all with landlords, if there's been any landlords that have been part of this process in terms of coming up with the RFP.
No.
No.
And there's a slight concern. One of the questions that we had talked about is a landlord does not have to participate in this. I mean, that's a slight concern where you have to, obviously you have to fill out some documentation. I think we said put a 1099. The way that I think about it, I used to be a landlord, is right now there's an eviction moratorium. So I though we didn't talk to landlords, I think there's a high probability that landlords will want to participate in that. If they don't participate, they're going to get $0. And the eviction process takes quite a long time. I used to work in the housing court as well. So any landlord that's worth their salt is going to know that when they go to eviction, they're going to get $0. So
Right.
It's going to be in their best interest to participate. Now, that's not to say we've got some really difficult landlords in Easthampton. Jamie and I had talked about it. There could be that rogue person that's like, nope. But we did not do this in conjunction with any local landlords.
Okay. Just, and I'm, because there's almost like two different levels of landlords in Easthampton. There's landlords that actually own a lot of rental units. And I feel like a program like this is almost more designed to those mom and pop landlords where they're really dependent on the rental dollars to come in order for them to be able to pay their mortgage. Now, to some extent, there's going to be some mortgage forgiveness for some of those landlords. So maybe they won't feel the crunch right off the bat, but it's almost like there's two different playing fields in Easthampton to some extent with the landlords. And so that's just something that's been rolling around in my head. It's really the small mom and pops that may only own, a couple units here, or really a small multifamily. It's not going to be necessarily the landlords that are, that may want to participate if they've got hundreds of units that they're getting income from. So that was just something rolling around my head. The other question that I had was, kind of following up on what Dan had noted in terms of the 100% AMI, and whether there had been any discussion about splitting up the funds so that you were hitting certain percentages differently. So, there might be more set of funds set aside for, 50% AMI versus 100% AMI.
I mean, I think that that's a great intention. I mean, I think part of the reason why we're not even sure how many people are going to need this or apply for this. The reason why Jamie drafted really good language in terms of the lottery, part of the reason for the lottery is, if we need it, is to kind of create more equity, and so that you don't have just one group of folks that are coming in, and often it might be the lower end of the spectrum. I mean, the way we drafted it, and we could always redraft it, of course, but our guess is going to be that the lower income would not be in the first round. And the reason being is because of the requirement to use RAFT or ESG if you were able to. Mm-hmm. So my guess is that the lower income just would be in a second round or in a later round. So again, the target is more for the 50 to 100%, which hopefully by the structure of this, we'll hit that. The other advantage of this is literally how Amherst is structuring their program. And so our hope is that some of the administrative costs in structuring it in exactly the same way is that it will keep them lower. But I think it's actually a good structure for the program, because the guess is that since they have to use ESG and RAFT, which are under 50% programs, the first round, if advertised correctly, and that is in the RFP, is going to get to the people who are in the gap, which is 50 to 100%.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Lottery, I'm sorry, Jess, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dan.
I just want to ask a question. Is the lottery automatic, or are we doing it if we have, how do we get to the lottery if we have too many people, or is there automatically a lottery? I'm misunderstanding that. Somebody answer that, Kate?
So what we had put in the RFP was that the lottery would happen if deemed necessary by the Planning Department and Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. And that would be based off of the amount of applications that are received, the amount of funding requests that are received. And the idea being that if we only got 5 applicants, we wouldn't need to do a lottery. But if we had 500 applicants, we definitely would want to do a lottery.
So does that mean that the administrating agency would wait until they see how many applicants come in, or do they do first come, first served? What do they do there? How does that work? Is it first come, first served, or is it you have to wait a week or 2 or something?
So there's going to be the way that we're putting, that we'd like to see the program run is there'll be a 2-week period in which it's being advertised and they're accepting applications. After that 2-week period, there'll be an evaluation of eligibility and a lottery if needed. If funding still exists after that lottery, then it would be first come, first serve until the funds are exhausted.
Okay, that makes sense. Jess, you had more questions. I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. A couple things with I'm hoping that the places that you plan to have these hard copy applications are going to be open to the public. So there was a whole listing of different places like the community center and the library and stuff like that. So just, I wanted to point that out in case our world doesn't end up that way. I'm wondering if you could scroll up to that that in the scope of no, not the RFP, but like the attachment to the RFP that talks about the program itself. I think,
on the bottom.
Was it D? We were talking about D. We were talking about.
I think it's down here, right?
Yeah, it's the guidelines.
Yeah.
Okay, so that D where it says household is not currently living in a state or federal subsidized public housing. So does that mean that tax credit deals or anybody living in a tax credit deal is not eligible because there's federal estate subsidies that went into those projects?
It's not a bad thing to clarify, but our intention is not that. Tax credits are not usually referred to as subsidized public housing.
Okay.
Usually it would be like a soft subsidy. So that's not our intention, and we can clarify it with, but no, it wouldn't be tax credits. We're talking about an actual subsidized unit.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that you noted the student restrictions for the LIHTC deals. So that's good. Okay.
So when you say clarify, are you going to kind of amend that D, or you're just going to clarify that with the agency that wins the bid? Okay.
I'm not sure we could talk about it. And one of the reasons why, and actually Jamie and Jackie, you can jump in if you disagree, in my own mind, and the only reason why is just to be really clear, Parsons Village would probably be a place that people might, which is a tax credit property, and this would actually be a good use of, again, many people there would be eligible for RAFT and ESG, but not necessarily. I don't remember what Parsons Village goes up to. It's probably 60% AMI, it would be my guess in some parts, and it might even be 80% AMI. So I just wouldn't want to, I don't know if Jamie, do you have the same before I speak so firmly? That was my intention with that language.
Yeah, and my understanding was that the reason why we weren't including state or federal subsidized public housing is because there were other programs in place to protect people who are living in subsidized public housing, like at the housing authority.
Well, because you couldn't, so the reason why, so if you're in a subsidized unit, it doesn't apply, because if you lose your job, your rent goes to $0 or $25.
Oh,
right.
Really?
That's what a true subsidy is versus a soft subsidy. whereas that won't happen in Parsons Village. Now you might have
I think it won't happen in Parsons Village.
no, it won't happen in Parsons Village. Parsons Village will stay is not subsidized in that way. Now you could still have some rental arrearage, but that's where Raft or ESG would assist.
But given that we already have that as a qualification, they only can apply in the subsidized public housing if they've exhausted all the other possibilities, correct? And then we'd have to decide they might be on the bottom of the list or something.
No, so what I'm saying, it's a slight clarification, but what I'm saying is if you're in state or federal public housing, you cannot apply. It's household is not currently living in state and public housing and is not participating. So if you're in state and federal public housing, you can't apply.
Okay.
And the reason being also because it's not our target, the chances of eviction would be much lower and your rent will be reduced to the appropriate amount based on income.
All right. Does that satisfy you, Jessica?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Any other questions from members? Anybody? I can see everybody. I don't have to.
Sure, I have a question.
Great.
It's really more of a timeline rollout type question.
Where was that, Jamie? I remember seeing that. Is that up above?
So page 9 in the PDF.
Yeah, so
It's
9 in the PDF has not been updated. The timeline that was included in the cover letter at the beginning of the application is a more realistic timeline for this program.
The way up at the top or in the application?
Yeah, Dan, go up to like page 2 of your PDF.
That one?
Yeah. So that's the more up-to-date timeline than what's in the RFP.
Fabulous. That was the timeline that I had in my mind, and I saw the later dates that were like September, October, and I was just curious about the rollout speed. So no question here. That looks good.
Well, and the other thing that I just want to repeat is that because we are going back to April 1st and people can't be evicted, we're going to help people that may be okay now but have arrears in rent. You know, we can help them, even though this is starting 21st of July. We're going to be able to help a few months back. Jeff.
Hi, thanks. I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I just want to thank the CPA and Greg and Kate and Jackie and everybody and Jamie who all worked on this. I think it's great that this is happening and it's happening fast and from a municipal perspective. And so I feel like it's good to be doing this and be responsive. You know, it's part of a package of things that we're trying to put together from various sources. So CPA, this is great for rental assistance. You know, Jamie's been working closely and tirelessly following the community development block grant program, which, you know, with some direction from the mayor, we're looking really hard at trying to support our small businesses through that program. And then if you haven't heard, you know, our arts coordinator in the Easthampton City Arts Coordinating Committee has created a small grant fund for artists. So, you know, these things we're trying to do to be as responsive as possible. So it's a lot of effort, but it's well worth it. And so something that you said, Dan, earlier was just struck me as, you know, sort of that this is, you know, how is this going to work? And I think it's pretty new for a lot of people trying to do this. So I'm appreciative that everyone stepped up and is making this happen. It's really important.
But I'm confident it'll work okay because these agencies, this isn't their first rodeo. Whoever's applying, whoever takes over for this, they've done this kind of rent relief and with different funding sources, right? So, okay. So given Jeff alluded to something, we have new rules and we wanted to normally have an applicant come back next month, but I'd like to waive that and get this started. Does anybody object to that?
Oh,
Okay. Going back to the funding agreement, this is pretty typical, and I have no problem with it. We're getting updates, etc. I like the notion that the CPA is someplace in the documents for the application. It'd be nice to, if an applicant knew that this was CPA funding, is that going to be on the application, Kate? Or anybody,
I'm
Jamie?
gonna look to Jamie for that, yeah.
I mean, we have to, obviously the application hasn't been developed yet by the contractor, but we will, within the abilities to, we will make sure that CPA gets credit for funding this program.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any problem with this current funding agreement? It looks pretty straightforward.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding in terms of the amount of money coming out of the affordable housing portion here. So, which is why I was asking about account balances at the beginning of the meeting. So we have about 233,000 remaining, according to Jamie, at the big, so we're basically essentially swiping this out for, or a good chunk of it, which we'll get another re-up starting the next fiscal year, correct? Which would be another 75,000 coming in.
But I want to stop you. We have no restriction in using our undesignated fund for affordable housing. So the fact that this is empty does not prevent us from.
I understand that. I understand that, but I just want to make sure that there isn't anything else coming down the pipeline, an affordable housing development project happening that's going to come and need $300,000. And if so, I mean, we'll pull it from the undesignated fund. But I just want the committee to be aware that, and I have no problem wiping it out, but I just want the committee to be aware that we're going to be depleting the majority of what we have in reserves for affordable housing, and that any other project coming forth would have to go into the undesignated funds.
It has been our policy to use up the funds in each of those areas first before we get to the undesignated. So this is actually what we want to do. We want to get those funds down to even to zero because we're using them, and we're going to restore them with the new budget. But because we don't have any restrictions on the undesignated fund, it doesn't hurt us with any other future project as long as it qualifies.
So then why don't we just wipe it clean with the 230? Why are we doing 2229?
The reason is because the $10,000 that was returned from the first-time homebuyer program has not, I don't know if that's because of the delay with COVID and the auditors, I don't know if that money's actually been deposited yet into the account. And depending on how it's deposited into the account, we might not actually have access to that money until after July 1st, once the accounts get certified. So that's why I'm using the 222,900.
Okay.
That's a very good answer. Thank you.
And we're not locked into that. So if that $10,000 becomes available, Jamie, we can use the restricted money rather than the unrestricted money first.
I don't think we can do that once we do the supplemental appropriation with the city council. Once that's
Correct.
done,
Yeah.
done. I mean, and I don't have a problem with it because we're going to get other affordable housing projects in the future. And that 10,000 will just transfer over to the next budget year, and it'll be 85,000 or something. So,
Correct.
Greg, I'm not worried about it.
I'm just always thinking about using the restricted dollars before the unrestricted because we can do anything with the unrestricted.
We're using most of it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions?
I did. Sorry, I didn't even write it down. But what was it?
Is it on this or on the?
It's on this. I think it had to do with a little bit of the rollout, maybe. I guess I just wanted to sort of talk openly as a committee about how this program looks to residents of the city and taxpayers of the city. So one of the the beneficiaries of this program on some level are renters who don't pay taxes, and they are landlords who might pay taxes. And I think the one thing I just wanted to raise as a question or maybe topic of discussion is the fact that many of these landlords don't live in Easthampton. So they are not necessarily Easthampton taxpayers who are landlord beneficiaries of this program. Although the renters are, but those are not the ones paying taxes.
Well, I'm not worried about that myself. I want to help the renters, and they're the Easthampton residents we're talking about. So.
Well, I'm not attacking it, Dan, trust me. I'm just raising it as a topic just for, consideration when it comes to knowing that this has already been in the Gazette and so forth. Just thinking about how I just want to be anticipatory and responsive to the questions and concerns that taxpayers in our community might have. And so anyhow.
Well, my quick observation of this, Greg, I think, to have some additional discussions about some talking points. I think as this, as this clears the city council meeting on June 3rd, and the RFP is going out, we have a little bit of time, but I do think some talking points would be useful so that there's a consistent message. Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me like that's what you're kind of, thinking about, and I think it's a great idea. I think we have a little bit of time, but not a lot of time, but I do think it makes sense to have some talking points so people can be consistent with the messages.
That would be great, Jamie, and you can develop them. But I want to point out that affordable housing is a major tenet of the CPA, and I believe that this falls right under it, and it is. I didn't think it was possible to do it, but I'm so happy that it is. And helping renters in this dire time is making their life affordable. I don't see why. That's my comment. If someone asks, why are we doing this? We could build a project with affordable housing funds like we did with Parsons and other places, but this is just as good as far as I'm concerned. So that's just my comment, Greg. I think I'm not worried about the legality. I think I saw that from somebody on Facebook, which is another thing I should not do.
But I definitely think it's the right thing to do, and I think it. Obviously, I was early on a proponent of looking into this as an option. It's the right thing for our community. It benefits people who are in need. It also secures, some level of payment for landlords too. I guess on that level. So I'm not doubting the value of it at all. I just wanted to air out my thoughts because I could go and do that to my cat, but it's better to do it with you guys.
Well, I really appreciate it because legality-wise, that's the question that'll be brought up. And Jamie brought up the other thing that's important to note is there's precedence for this. We have Amherst. So the more, if you guys have talking points and you bring up some other cities and towns, even locally, besides Amherst, that might be considering this, that helps too. We're not the only ones. This isn't the only game. Easthampton.
Yeah. Well, and statewide, I think there are a lot of other, initiatives too. So, I mean, I'm comforted by being in good company, and I don't even mind going out on a limb when it's the right thing to do. So, I just wanted to raise the potential prism that residents in this community might see it through in a positive or negative way. So,
Jackie.
I was just going to say that Housing Partnership meets next week, and I'm sure that putting together talking points is on our agenda.
Excellent.
Yep.
I think it's a good idea, and Dan, I think it's probably less the legality, and it's going to be the perception. So I think something that Jessica said was kind of the mom and pop, property owners in Easthampton. If there's a way that we can make sure that we're trying to do some outreach to them as well. I think to Greg's point, that would be the concern is that someone says, oh, some landlord who lives, in town, whatever, Long Meadow or something.
Or homeowners that can't pay their mortgage, and they say, why are we helping renters, but we're not using this to help homeowners? And, I don't know the answer to that. So talking points would be very, very helpful.
Because we're not allowed.
Well, I mean, we could do a mortgage assistance program with CPA. It's more complicated because with the mortgage assistance program, we would need to actually have a long-term housing restriction on that property in order to create the public benefit. And there's a lot of other options available to people who are seeking mortgage assistance.
Yeah.
And I would also just add that, although maybe not all renters pay property tax in Easthampton. They are members of the community, sometimes members of the community for decades, who've
Right.
been living in Easthampton. They do pay income taxes to the state. We get funded from the state, and almost on average, a third of the CPA budget every year comes directly from the state. It's not all just local revenue.
That's good to know.
Greg,
Yeah,
I
so
think actually,
great
I
points.
think Jackie's idea about, I think we'll put it on the agenda for next week, because I think it's a good point you're making, and I think how people perceive things is kind of, at the end of the day,
It's
almost
huge.
what becomes reality. I mean, I think the other thing, just because I've dealt with a lot of NIMBY, is that the fact that if we advertise this really as a 50 to 100% program, which really is our target, I think that will also help, because I think people can imagine, you know, you're about to buy a home, you're in the 50 and the 100%. And so we're not talking about poor people, we're really talking about you and me. And so I think what might make the most sense is what Jackie's suggesting. There really was, when we went to the CPA, there was a whole webinar on this, and there was a lot of discussion about home ownership forgiveness, and the recommendation, and we can add this to the talking points, is actually that you don't use CPA for loan forgiveness, because don't duplicate services. And there really are a lot of programs out there for homeowners. And so not that it would be a waste of our CPA dollars, but it brings up the problem that Jamie's talking about, as well as there are other, we'd be duplicating something. So I think if we put that on the agenda for next week, and I don't know, Jamie and Jeff, is there a way that we could, how would we get our talking points to the CPA committee? Or again, they don't have to be permanent, but they'd be draft.
Well, we can bring them to the city council meeting on June 3rd.
Good idea.
That would be great.
You can do that, or you can just email them. It's not a open meeting thing, because we're not discussing it. You're just saying, here's the talking points.
Okay.
Come up with. And I had something else, but I forget. John.
I just wondered, would it be helpful to put together an FAQ for these, addressing these potential questions?
Yes.
Just exactly the kinds of things you
I
all
would,
have been talking about in advance of those questions being asked?
in fact, if we could put it on the Easthampton website, I don't know if East Housing Partnership, I know the CPA has a position in the website, and we can put those FAQs there, or whatever we can do to explain the program, we could put it there.
I guess that from my perspective, there's the piece of it that we're going to be asking city council for, and then there's the explanation of the program once it's funded. And so are we talking about putting together an FAQ for like city councilors or members of the public as we're going forward for the appropriation, or are we looking at this as an explanation of the program for people who might be applying to it once it's funded?
I think there's what Jackie's preparing, and talking points could be great for the city council. I don't think you're going to have a problem with this with the city council, but
Right.
I would ask Jackie and Kate to come to that meeting. It'll be a finance meeting after it's introduced, and then the public hearing. But those talking points would help. But the FAQs would be for the public, in my mind, after it's funded. We put them
Yeah,
on.
I would say that I would think of the document as something that is going to be widely dispersed on social media, and people are going to be emailing to all of their friends that they think might be able to take advantage of it. And so I think the more details you can put in there about who is eligible and how it's going to work, I would highly encourage that, because you may be able to prevent an abundance of people contacting your office looking for information, thinking they qualify, and then they don't. So so you may want to just kind of do it that way. There's a great model. There was the emergency rental assistance, the federal one that the House just passed, and I stumbled across a fantastic 2-pager that they put together, and I'm happy to send it to you, and you could use that as a model if you'd like.
That'd be great.
That'd be great.
Okay, if we're done discussing, I'd like to have a motion to approve $300,000 to the Planning Department and Affordable Fair Housing Partnership for Emergency Rental Assistance Grant Program.
I'll move to do that.
Who was that? Greg?
I'll move for that, for the 300,000.
Okay. Who seconded? Jeff?
Jeff?
Any further discussion? Just to say that, yeah, I'll talk about that after. Okay, Jamie, can you do a roll call of the membership, please?
All right. Andy Hunter. Absent. Dan Rist.
Yes.
Ed Swinicki. Absent. Greg Rowland.
Yes.
Jay Ryan.
Yes.
Jessica Allen.
Aye.
John Bruner.
John?
Aye. Yes.
Chris Cockshaw.
Yes.
Scott Kavanaugh.
Yes.
All right, so
Motion passed.
motion passes 7 in favor, 2 absent.
So, just to conclude this, the signature of the applicant, would that be you, Jeff, Planning Department? On the letter of agreement? It would be good if it was you. Planning Department has a lot of pull in city council right now, so I don't think it matters, but would you be the one to sign this?
I would assume so, but
Well, you and
I think
Jamie
I
decide, but I think it would be you because it's a Planning Department thing, or it could be.
It could be me. It doesn't, but if
Doesn't
we want Jeff to sign it, that's fine too.
Okay. You'll send this out DocuSign and also send out the supplemental appropriation for DocuSigning, Jamie, within a week?
Yeah, I'll have to get up to, I don't think I have DocuSign.
yeah, we can
So-
we can work through Zoe in the mayor's office.
Or Barbara. Barbara has DocuSign.
Yeah.
So you need to get that to us next week early and then to me, so I can sign it as the committee chair and also the supplemental appropriation, and then it gets to Barbara next Thursday for the packet for the June 3rd. Now, the June 3rd time, Jackie and Kate, it just goes to committee. I don't know if you need to be there for that. So those talking points and things would be important for the finance meeting, which will be June 10th. Okay? Thank you very much. That's done. Let's go to the Open Space and Recreation Plan update. My only comment on this.
Not leaving the meeting. Thank you so much.
You're
Hey,
welcome.
good job. Thank you.
Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
My only question, you can see my little comment here, Jeff, is there any non-CPA funding or is this all CPA funding for this? Or does the actual project cost more than 36,000 or 35?
The ideal situation for us at the moment is that this project is fully funded through CPA.
Okay,
I've attached the scope of services from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and I did add an additional $1,000 for printing. That is the one thing that I didn't see that in their scope, and it's one thing that it didn't come up necessarily at the last minute. But what I am seeing as a result of COVID, there's likely kind of a reverting back to a little bit more basic methods for communication for something like this. So my hope is that we could do a mailer town-wide when we're ready with the survey. So there's a way through the U.S. Postal Service that you can do a geographic mailer. So we're not going to be mailing a copy of the survey, but we can mail a flyer or a little pamphlet about that. So I've added that additional cost in there. It's not really articulated in their scope.
there's a budget here. I didn't go all the way through this because I think that CPA funded this before, didn't we? We did something, I don't know.
It's possible. The last time it was updated, or was in 2012. So that's the important part for me in terms of a quick introduction, is that we do have a great open space and recreation plan, and it has served us well to give us kind of the foundation to pursue funding and to make things happen. It's set to expire this October, so it's important that we begin to look at updating it. The CPA was very generous in supporting a wide range of projects historically, but most recently the acquisition of the parcel on East Street. And one of my goals is to apply for another park grant in July for design and construction. And so CPA also funded the work that the Dotson and Flinker Landscape Associates are working through now to come up with a preliminary concept. So it's things like that that the open space plan has helped, and we need, we're good. I had some communications with the people in the park department, park office, and they're fine. We can apply in July, even if our plan is going to expire in October. And she did say that we would even be eligible for funding. The funding announcements usually come out in December. Her notation was it would be nice if we were in contract to show that we're making, a good faith effort to be in the process of updating it. And so that scope of services was something that I've been working on for a couple months with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. And I think to your question about other funding, I had made an attempt to get this funded without coming to CPA. The Planning Commission has access to district local technical assistance funds. So I did put in an application for that, but we were not chosen to be awarded for that. So
Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
so now, it seems like this is a very perfect fit for CPA to fund us to embark on updating the plan. And obviously there might be questions. I'm happy to answer them.
But updating the plans, though, by itself helps us with the ability to gain grants in the future, does it not, for parks and anything, because we have this in place? Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. And I give a lot of credit to people who worked on this before. It's a good plan, but things have changed, and we are continuing to evolve. And it's not to put too fine a point on what's going on currently, but anecdotally, there's been a lot more use of our open space trails and recreational areas as of recently, and we think it's actually going to be a great time to try to reach out to people and get their input. With more people having experienced, our really special places. But the things that since I've been working here, there have been a renewed interest. There's new groups who are curious about their opportunities, and so the quick examples that I had in the cover letter, are mountain biking, the dog park. At least we're kind of separately pursuing the dog park, but that is listed in the open space plan as it is today. Groups that are pursuing frisbee golf and then skateboarding, are these kind of different types of recreational uses that are a little bit underrepresented in the plan currently. So if you look at mountain biking, we've been approached by groups who want to pursue funding, and I have worked with them, but I do say, we're missing, mountain biking being listed as any kind of priority in the plan. Mountain biking is really sort of absent from the open space plan currently. So it puts us in a different position it's harder to seek funding for something that, isn't really listed. So things like that are occurring, and we want to, launch the plan as soon as possible. So that's the request for the full amount from CPA.
Greg.
Yeah, so I'm in support of it, and I think it's a great idea, and I like the idea that this helps possibly leverage grants and so forth. So, kudos to you, Jeff, and your, putting forth the application. One thing that that may be kind of peripheral to this, but I'm realizing may be increasingly central during this pandemic moment is, when you're talking about possibly leveraging grant money, I wonder, this is all sort of open space and outdoor recreation, but I have mentioned the possibility for our Parks and Recreation Department to pursue avenues for our youth to do online competitions, sports and games competitions, which I'm not a gamer myself, so it's odd for me to be in a position to be mentioning this. But should this environment that we're living in right now continue, our youth need avenues for competition and for engagement with one another. And I know there is money out there for recreation that is like that. So I just wanted to put that out there. My take on the application is that really this is focused on outdoor stuff, but I don't know if it's appropriate to throw something in there that might allow us to pursue dollars for our youth to do recreation in a virtual way. Sort of a bizarre comment, I realize, but I just mentioned
I
it.
don't think it is, not in these days.
Yeah, anything's bizarre, right?
That's all the kids are doing now. They're gaming with each other in small groups. I don't know, Jeff, is that something that is possible to be looked at or put into the survey? Virtual recreation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a problem to get that sort of data in the survey. I mean, I think it sounds like it would also, yeah, so that's fine. I mean, I think there are guidelines at the state as to what they're expecting to see in an open space and recreation plan. So that's really the basis for the structure as you see it, those sections that are shown on the screen now. But it is a good time to be thinking about that. I think it's fine. I think though there are a lot of funding sources that seem to be coming forward that could be, you know, specifically applied for that. So I think if you're kind of looking at the Parks Department, there, you know, we get a list of all these funding sources, and so definitely there's a lot of support for thinking outside the box and how to use some of that funding. So I just think it may come up naturally as a result of where we are today. When the survey questions get formulated and we get that out, you know, we'll try to leave something in there for those other forums. So I think it's fine.
Something coming out of the planning department, I wouldn't expect. I mean, planning is like, how do we work with our physical space? So it really is more of a parks and recreation thing. So I didn't know if it was appropriate for this, but I thought if ever I was going to mention it, I would just do it tonight.
That's good. That's fair.
Depends on one's definition of recreation. Any other members have questions of Jeff on this?
I just want to, I know that there's an ADA component to this, but I didn't see any mention of utilizing the Disability Commission, our local Disability Commission. I just hope that PVPC, when they do that, that there is some level of engagement with those members of our community.
I think Jeff is looking.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I think it would make sense to have them included. It's a sidebar. It's a total side note at this point, but you know, we have tried twice to apply for the self-evaluation funding from the Mass Office of Disability, and we haven't gotten it twice. And that was one of the goals, was to get a proper transition plan and the inventory done. But now we have to kind of work within the confines of, you probably know, Jess, I mean, I think we have to work within the confines of our open space and public recreation facilities. And there is an updated version that we're going to work off of for this. And I think, yeah, the Disability Access Advisory Board now it's in a bit of transition. So I think it would give them some an opportunity for a project to have input on. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think they'd enjoy the participation. Anybody else? So Jeff, timeline, normally we do 2 meetings on an application again, but it sounds like you need to get this out. Does it have to be out before October or something? I mean, you have to have this done before October? What's the deal on that?
I suppose I would ask for your willingness to package it with the CPA project. But if for some reason you were not able to do that, I can make it work, but it'll just be a little bit harder. We do not have to get it done before October. But the key thing is to get the funding in place so that we can finalize the contract and get PVPC working on it. So that's really the constraint that I would note.
Well, let me say this. When an applicant such as yourself provides the amount of information you've given us, it makes it easier to do an application. And this is a small amount of money, which I say is not a problem with regard to other funding, as much as if it was $300,000 and there was no other funding.
Yeah.
But that was the rental assistance program was a special thing. And it is in combination with other funding from other funding sources for those agencies. So I don't have an objection to moving this along this evening. because I don't think there's any other questions that need to be answered that you would have to pursue and research for the next meeting. Do members have any problem with allowing this to move tonight?
No problem.
Okay with me.
You're okay? Everybody's okay? Then I would take a motion to approve $36,000 for the open space. What are we calling this? The Open Space and Recreation Plan update.
I'll make a motion to appropriate $36,000 to fund the open space and recreation plan update.
I'll second.
I'll second it.
Well, Scott, you're late. John already did it.
Sorry, Scott.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Jamie, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Andy Hunter, absent. Dan Rist,
Yes.
Ed Swinicky, absent. Greg Rowland,
Yes.
Jay Ryan,
Yes.
Jessica Allen,
Yep.
John Bruner,
Yes.
Chris Crockshaw,
Yes.
Scott Kavanaugh.
Yes.
All right, motion passes by a vote of 7 in favor and none against, 2 members absent.
So now we have 2 documents that have to come my way before Thursday to be signed by Jeff again, or you. This one would be Jeff, the other one could be Jamie, and then the supplemental appropriation as well. Before next Thursday, I sign them. So you work with either the mayor's office or with Barbara to get that done, Jamie?
Yeah, what do you want? Did you want to do there was no project funding agreement in advance for this project, so.
I would do the boilerplate one, but you just did. I don't think there's any problem with that. There's nothing special in the proposal. Jeff has heard our notes on disability, on possible virtual recreation, getting those in. I think we can trust that he'll do that. I don't think that has to be in the funding agreement. Does anybody have anything that they want special in the funding agreement? If not, we should do a funding agreement, as we always do, and do it as a, we should give the city council the application and all the information, but also a funding agreement. We all do those, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Last thing on this is did you want to give us a Mount Tom Trail design update, Jeff?
Yes, please. Thank you. So going from a project on the open space plan update where we have everything kind of ironed out and ready. So that, that was a lot of effort to get the scope in place. We are working on the trail design for that parcel on East Street. And we had a virtual community meeting on April 4th. It was the first one that I personally conducted as a meeting open to the public, and it was pretty early on. And we had 41 people who were on the call.
Wow.
Right, that's not bad. You know, and that's you know, that could be a well-attended public meeting in and of itself. Lots of people spoke positively about the opportunity to just do it virtually from their house. So it was a good meeting, and we got the input that we were looking for. And what we have done since then with the consultant, it's just Dotson and Flinker out of Florence, is we put out the survey. So hopefully you've maybe caught that somewhere, at least through the planning department's Facebook page. There was an article in the Gazette. And we reached out specifically to the Housing Authority and to Riverside Industries to get you know, input from those stakeholders. And so the last time I checked, I got an update about a week and a half ago from them, and they had over 100 responses to the survey, which again is good responsive. That's a good response rate. So where I do not have exactly the next steps, I don't have a concept plan in front of me. What I did want to just talk about briefly was the concept of pursuing a park grant in July. We are going to be getting a schematic design and a rough cost estimate for what it would take to construct the parking area a handicapped accessible trail as sort of, if you would consider that like phase one. And then there would be sort of a gathering area at the top of the site where there used to be a house, phase two. And then phase three would be sort of a walking loop and another connection to the New England Scenic Trail. What I was hoping to just explore with the committee is my ability to come back next month to your next meeting and talk about the potential for matching or providing. So the park grant requires a 20% match. I do not know what the initial cost estimate is, and I don't have the schematic. So this was intended to kind of give a brief update and just have the conversation about coming back during the June meeting. What the committee did last time was we discussed potential dollar amounts, and the CPA issued a commitment letter, which was not a vote to authorize the funding, but that it would be willing to, authorize some funding to support the project. So I'll answer questions, and I just was wondering the feasibility of coming back in June with the possibility of seeking a letter of commitment. Obviously, I am not presenting you with any numbers or information, so I'm not asking you to commit to anything now, just the idea of having a discussion in June about it.
Will you have numbers in June?
I would need to be here I would need to come to you with something, which currently I don't have any numbers, so I would want to know what those are.
Okay.
But the ideal scenario would be that some kind of match or contribution from CPA is really looked at very positively from the park program.
CPA is designed to leverage those kinds of grants. That's fine. I don't know how much it'll be, but that's what we're here for. You
Right.
have a comment on that or questions of Jeff on the design of the Mount Tom Trail? Nobody? Everybody?
Yeah, my goal would be similar to the cover letter I had for the open space and rec plan. I would put together a cover letter and a request to at least appear. And my goal, to work with Dotson is to understand what their preliminary numbers are looking like. And the ideal scenario would be to come with a slight range of what this could look like, and then talk through it with CPA and discuss willingness to talk about a certain number. And then the idea would be a letter of commitment that I could put in with the application in mid-July.
What's the three phases? Is it like over 3 years or 10 years or 6 months?
We don't know yet. Depending, so park grant funding is for up to $400,000. So I've been pressing Dotson a little bit to help us figure out if we could accomplish, for example, phase one and phase two together. And I just don't know yet. So the construction of a parking area is off East Street, and then the handicapped accessible trail, we would at a minimum, we would try to pair those two together.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could get sort of a gathering area, even just, some landscaping, so the site needs to be regraded. Even if there's some way to make it presentable, all as part of this first phase of construction. So I believe I would have more information for the CPA committee at the next meeting.
Can we phase funding that way so that we don't, if the total project costs $300,000, you do 100 this year, 100 next year, something like that, Jeff? Is there a possibility of that? It just spreads the CPA commitment over time?
I think there is. I think if we can formulate that, I think the park program acknowledges phased projects, especially if we have identified the phases. So it would be work that we would have to create the program and then be clear with them that this is a phased program. They're very good, and the last webinar that we had for information on this grant round is they just want to fund the creation of parks and trails and things. So they are eager to get good proposals.
Okay. Oh, hi. I have no problem with that, Jeff. Does anybody have any questions of Jeff on this process? Seems fine.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple of notes before we adjourn. On Thursday night, the CPA budget is up before the City Council Finance Committee, and a lot of counselors are always there. I'm going to be sending this out to all of you, the finance Zoom invitation to all of you. We may have some question as to why we're setting aside $250,000 for the Old Town Hall. Remember, we committed to that. That establishes that budget. Every year we've been setting some money aside. I just would like some help to defend that. If any of you could join Thursday night, I'd appreciate it. So I'll be sending that out to all of the CPA members if anybody wants to come. And Jamie, I'd appreciate if you could come to that meeting.
Yep.
And Jeff, you're there anyway for the government, for the planning department. So, okay.
Yep.
Also on June 3rd, I don't know. I'm not sure if we'll need your help, but that's when we're supposed to be doing the entire budget. So I think if the finance committee votes to support the CPA's budget, we're all set. But I just thought I'd mention it. Okay. Thank you all, and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Move we
adjourn.
Jamie, you have to do a roll call vote to adjourn us. Unfortunately, that's the rules here.
All right. Andy Hunter, absent. Dan Rist,
Yes.
Ed Swinicky, absent. Greg Rowland,
Yes.
Jay Ryan,
Yes.
Jessica Allen,
Yep.
John Bruner,
Yes.
Chris Cockshaw,
Yes.
and Scott Kavanaugh.
Okay, we'll see you June 18th, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and stay safe out there.
Yep.
Bye,
Good night,
everybody.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very much.